we are getting some kit ready because we are off to Makins tomorrow. There's an open match on phase 1. Now phase 1 is the bigger lakes. There's been a load of work happening at Makins with stocking of all the different lakes, feeder fishing and pole fishing I think tomorrow. The match is on lake 4 and lake 3 I think. I fancy a draw on lake 3. I think that's the most consistent lake. The weather doesn't look the greatest. Looks like it might get a bit of rain. It seems to rain every single day, no matter what the weatherman says. It seems to rain every day at the minute. Hopefully we'll miss a bit of rain though. Looks like it's going to be windy. I'm thinking big fish. I'll buy some pellets in the morning. Need to get some dead maggots, a little bit of ground bait maybe if I'm chucking a feeder. Hopefully we'll get a good peg. Next time I see you, we'll be at the draw. So folks, I've come back to the car park, try and get out of the wind, but hopefully you can see on that far bank, middle of that far bank, there's a set of kit without an angler. That's my peg. This bank, wind off the back, beautiful. It's like a summer's day, sort of. Over there, it is like sitting in a hurricane. That end peg on the windy bank though is Andy Finley. Nice warm wind. I think he will take some beating. That's my prediction. And then one of these guys maybe down here could do well also. I've got a short pole set up. Can't see me fishing any further than 6-7 meters in this wind. Little hybrid feeder with fishery micros and a bit of crushed expander to start with. Swim Stim Sweet F1 crushed expander, like a 50-50 mix. There's a lot of F1s and skimmers and bits and bobs in this lake, so I'd love to catch some big carp, but I think at least to start with we're fishing for those smaller species, and then hopefully we can catch late on a short pole. Presentation is going to be awkward though, so I've got to try and work that out as fast as I can. Got a nice heavy rig on, 4x18s float, but I think one of these guys down there is going to have a nice day out of the wind. And then for some big carp, I reckon Finn will motor in the second half of the match, win this lake. If I could stay within sort of £20 of Finn, I'd be happy. Paying 3 on this lake, I think there's 14 I think on this lake, and then on lake 3 next door, I think we've got another 7, 8, maybe 9 anglers on that lake as well. So a decent match for a midweeker. I'm hoping we can catch a few. So folks, let's talk about how I've approached the match. Now, there could be a bit of wind noise on the camera because the conditions are so bad. Wind smack bang in our face, waves lapping against the bank, you name it, conditions are terrible for today. So, first job, chuck out my little hybrid feeder. It's a small 24 gram Guru hybrid feeder. I've got a mix of fishery micros, softened up on the morning of the match, with some crushed expander. Now this is Swim Stim F1 Sweet crushed expander. For me, I prefer a crushed expander ground bait when I'm fishing with method feeders or hybrid feeders because it expands when you put the bait in the water. What I don't want is my ground bait to sit as a lump on the lake bed. I want everything to start breaking up, and a crushed expander ground bait does that just a little bit better than a standard fish meal style mix. So crushed expander F1 Sweet gives it a lovely smell, slight bright colour. I feel that fish absolutely love that. Right folks, let's have an update if you can hear me over the wind. I'm trying my best. We have had a pretty good start, I'm saying, on the feeder. We are halfway through the match. I'm looking around the lake, it's not fishing amazing. Odd fish being caught. I've had £20 of F1s I reckon, and I've had a nice big carp that I think is probably going to be £9 or £10. Nice bonus that is. I've not even been on the pole yet. Hopefully there's a raft of skimmers and carp waiting for me on that short pole line, but while I'm still catching on this tip, I'm going to keep chucking it out. That same, there we go, oh he's on. Let's reel him in, then I'll talk you through the bait. Small F1s and the odd smaller carp were the name of the game when I was fishing this feeder. I was casting out, sitting there, 2 to 5 minutes bite time. Tip would absolutely fly around. I was talking to Andy Finley after the match about these F1s, how they attack the feeder. It's almost like they take a run up. They see the bait, they take a run up, pick it up on the go. The bites are just ridiculous. I think in all honesty you actually miss the bite because they're quite gentle feeders, and all you see is the fish tearing off at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So the first couple of hours were pretty steady. Like I say, small F1s, an odd carp, casting around the swim was really important. Water temperatures are still on the cooler side. I felt that I couldn't build up a pile of bait, so casting around the swim, trying to steal fish from fresh spots was the way to go. Didn't want to cast too far. Wind is in our face. I felt that most of the fish were going to be on our side of the lake because that wind was going to push them into our side of the lake. Now, all the time I was feeding that pole line. I decided not to pop bait in. I felt that the bait was going to go everywhere anyway, so what I wanted to do was feed 6mm hard pellets, try and feed something that's reasonably heavy, but feed them either by hand or, on this day, I'm only fishing 7 metres out, remember, I've actually picked up the catapult to get that bait on a reasonably tight area. So just catapulting in a few, 6 to 8 pellets, every time I cast that feeder out, 6 to 8 pellets going on that pole line, priming it for later on in the session. The F1s were averaging probably about 12 ounce to 1.5 pounds. Nice weight building fish. Looking around the lake, not many people were getting bites in this early part of the match. I was looking at the odd F1 getting caught. I think only 2 or 3 carp caught on the whole lake. So with my 20-25 pound after 2 hours, that was well up there. You can tell there's a few fish in the area. Obviously getting a few line bites always gives you a bit of confidence that the tip's going to fly around at some point. Just reading your tip, getting them indications all the time, like I say, it gives you a massive amount of confidence. So folks, before we were interrupted by a lovely little carp, I was going to tell you the bait. So that's what we're doing. We're chucking out our little hybrid feeder. That mix there of micros and that expander, crushed expander, that swim stim F1 crushed expander. Single maggot, got a little pile of dead maggots there ready to go. Single maggot on the hook. And we're just chucking it sort of like 25 metres out. It seems to be good. Let me tell you what else is happening, because Finn on that corner has just had a couple of carp in his margins. He's a danger. There's odd fish being caught on that far bank, but not loads. Odd fish to my right. There we go. And this, as you can see, keeps going round. It's a little F1. Let's see if we can carry on catching a few. Now, with conditions as they were, I felt that my only chance of winning or framing in this match would be to catch on a pole late on. So, with about 90 minutes or 2 hours of the match to go, I've dropped on that pole line. Remember, I've been loose feeding those pellets on that line for most of the day. Hopefully a few fish have settled. I've sat there for like 5 or 6 minutes, no indication on the float, and then all of a sudden, a little tiny ding, I've got my first carp on the pole. They're beautiful fishing lake for. There's some fish up to, I'm guessing, 20 pounds, but there's some fresh fish as well that have been stocked recently. The fisheries team at Makins have done a fantastic job over the last sort of 18 months getting the venue up to speed. So it's a great feeling when you first catch your first fish on that short pole line, because then you feel that you're going to go on and catch a few more. It's an area of the swim where bigger fish generally sort of sit late on in a match, and if you can catch fish on that short line, you're going to catch them fast, and quite often big fish as well. So because of conditions, we've used a slightly different rig to one that I would use on a normal commercial fishery peg. The peg's about 6 foot deep, so with that wind and the tow, the fact that I'm fishing on the shelf, so the bottom's a little bit uneven, sloping away from me all the time, I fish with a really short line. I fish with a 4x18 float. It's a Malman Rube float, a wire stem for stability. That short line between pole tip and float is hopefully going to help me control the rig. It's not to hit bites at any speed, it's just to help me control the rig and keep the rig in the right place for as long as possible. I've got my shot, or my slot shot, in the bottom sort of foot of the rig, bulked really heavily down above the hook length. Normally I would use an 8-inch hook length for carp fishing. For big carp I prefer a longer hook length, but for today I've used a 4-inch hook length, just so I can get my weight of that rig, those slot shot, closer to the hook bait and hopefully keep everything a little bit more stable in that bottom foot of the rig. All the time I'm trying to hold the rig as still as possible, getting those tiny little bites because of the wind and the tow, but every time that float shot under, no indications, no line bites, I've hooked a fish. You know, I've probably missed 3 or 4 bites throughout the match, but you're going to do that with big carp. But considering how many fish seem to be in the area and feeding quite aggressively, missing 3 or 4 bites, it's nothing. You know, maybe the feeding was right, maybe it was just that the fish were feeding in a real confident way because of the conditions, I don't know, but it just seemed to be working nicely. Every time I've hooked a fish, 2 lots of pellets over the top, so 2 lots of 8 pellets, 6mm pellets, so you're giving them sort of like 16, 20 pellets, letting it settle, and by the time you've played that fish, netted that fish, you can drop in and hopefully some bait settled on the bottom, some fish are feeding, you can drop in, hook the next fish. That's the plan. It seems to be working brilliantly. Now, looking around the lake, didn't seem like as many people were catching as fast as me. It's obvious that I've got a lot of fish in the area and not so many fish in other places of the lake. Andy Finley was catching a few fish on the MPEG as we expected. He always does brilliantly at Makins, any venue as a matter of fact, but he was catching a few fish. But I felt that I'd got over £100 with sort of like half hour to go. Another net goes in, and as it was, I played a fish on the whistle, netted a fish, one of my biggest fish of the day. I've put in my 3rd net, and come the way in, we've actually gone over in both of our carp nets. Only by £1 or so, and you get knocked back to £60, but we've gone over in both of those nets, £61 or £62 in both of those nets, got knocked back to £60, so £120 of carp in almost, I'm going to say, the last 90 minutes of the match. Really good fishing, fantastic fishing for the time of year, and a testament to how good Makins is now as a venue. I've ended up weighing £150, which has given me the match win. Great result against some decent guys as well. Andy Finley was second on my lake. There's been some other good weights on Lake 3 as well. A really well run match. Great to get out at Makins. You can see that Makins is on the rise. It's turned into a fantastic venue once again. A lot of work has been going on. I'm really enjoying my fishing at the minute. And until next time, guys, tight lines.